Yeah, good morning in real life. Well, little people knew that I'm a avid scholar of history in general and African history in particular. So a lot of the work that I do, and they are based in African history. And I was planning to do a series on African history, but I was waiting until I got some other series basically out of the way first, but a friend requested that I introduced him. So I'm going to do a review of one of the books that got me started on African scholarship about African history. And it's a book called 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro with complete proof. And it's written by J.A. Rogers. It says from from human Superman to man, sex and race, world's great, man of color, nature no color lines, etc. And it is said that J.A. Rogers was a person that couldn't read and write, but he had traveled a lot and he was a very smart person because back in the days, and he's a Jamaican, so back in the days, way Jamaicans were able to read and write was if they were a part of a church, basically, and they read one book, and that was the Bible. So most Jamaicans of color couldn't read or write back then. However, this scholarly work is one of the best books I've read. One of the most I wouldn't say the best, but one of the most interesting entry books into African scholarship. All right. So on the first page, I learned about the black champion of German history as well as the white one. So it says the black champion of history and German history, and that was the Archbishop Saint Maurice. Saint Maurice is the celestial saint of Germany wearing a German eagle on his head. 2 centuries later, Hitler was also wearing that same eagle on his head. A golden jewel mass of Saint Maurice is in the Chedger Abbey of Saint Maurice in Switzerland. The noted Negrite aspect of the mass, and see it here. Archbishop of Germany. And he's he's looked up in as a venerable saint in German history. He's seen German nation states, and they were having a forum discussing who is the most important among the German saints, and Black Bishop Saint Maurice was ranked third with contemporary Germans, but he was the first, and he was idolized by Germans. And it's also it's very. This is the statue of Venus. That's what they call it in Europe. Statue of Venus. It was stolen from Africa. This is the Sphinx, and this looks like some of the Maya artifacts. And all of these were Negroid figures in the Americas. All right, so it said the Sphinx, which is a half human, half lion figure. It is theorized that the Sphinx at first was like the depiction of Anubis, that is the dog, but afterward they chiseled it out to form the Sphinx. Another theory that it was that of an actual lion. And after years of it being withered away, they converted the mass of the lion distinctly negroid, especially the mouth. Forehead is a sign. So the mark on the forehead is like the little snake thing that you see in the Egyptian is a sign of divinity. So that's the little cobra. It's called Uranus. And this says the second one is the statue of Venus of Willendorf, woolly haired breast, hips, and labia majora of that of the African bushwoman. The face was probably just painted on. That's what the book refers to. And this says numbers 3 and 4 were from the prehistoric eras of Mexico, which I mentioned South American. as well as the Olmec head. As this is all of these are indisputable proof that Negro greats of antiquity and they did not start from slavery because most of these artifacts predated slavery. And it shows here the bravest of the braves, and these are some military generals, some Congressional Medal, some Victoria Cross winners. So these soldiers would have fought in Worlds One and Two. So that's just the preface. We're gonna go into the 100 facts. So it's gonna start, see, this preface, and we're gonna start with the 100 facts. So we're on the inside of the book now. It says 100 amazing facts about the Negro with complete proof, a shortcut to the world history of the Negro by J.A. Rogers. Author, From Superman to Man, World's Greatest Men and Women of Color, Sex, Race, etc. And it was published by Helga M. Rogers in St. Petersburg, Florida. And he starts it with a Shakespearean quote: "There are more things in heaven and earth than..." Yeah, he starts with a Shakespearean quote: "There are more things in heaven and earth than you've dreamt of in your philosophy." And then he goes on to a quiz, short quiz. He said, "In what very important respect of population does Afro-American differ now from all the other various of groups of which the United States is composed, including Indian, but is like the French, German, English, and Belgian, and all the other peoples of Europe?" So he said, in what way does the Afro-American or African-American, we will use now, differ from all the other people groups? It says, when did the seizure of the Negro woman as a slave in the United States lead to a war of 2 years in the United States in which 20,000 US Army troops were engaged where they were all massacred? So that would be like guerrilla in one part of that state, and was punishable with 2 years imprisonment in another part. So it says in a section of the state, it was legal, and in another section, it was punishable by 2 years jail time. And I'm having my breakfast simultaneously. Right? The mission is a Negro girl, slave George Washington from certain death at the beginning of the revolution. Who was she? And we don't often hear about these unsung heroes, but there was a documentary when I was small, not a documentary, a cartoon series on PBS talking about the American Revolutionary heroes. And to my surprise, there were a lot of black figures in that cartoon. It was played back when I was small, but a lot of people don't hear of these unsung heroes. And if that girl didn't save George Washington at the start of the revolution, there would be no George Washington, the first president of the United States. So very important to note there. And he said, when did Abraham Lincoln order back into slavery 500,000 or more Negroes who had been declared free by their subordinates? So another thing that I didn't know about Abraham Lincoln. What American vice president, because of his color and his feature, was publicly denounced in Congress and in press as being a Negro? Yes, so there's always been talks of a black president before Barack Obama. He would have been mixed like Obama to pass in the initial stages as a white person. Besides, the next question, besides the fact that the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, what most amazing fact is true of it? So he's going to say that as well. And first amazing fact. I'm reading something. May I read something? Something I read.
Is it?
Something I read, man. You're good there. You get you? You get you?
Yeah, man.
Oh.
So this is Baba. This so
The first fact says the white population of New York is a third more literate than the Negro one, and this was printed in 1957. Second, Benjamin Banneker was a Negro astronomer who made the first clock made in America in 1754. Three, coffee comes from three most famous and most sought after in the world, one of the most expensive and prestigious brands as well. Four, George Washington sent slaves to Barbados to be exchanged for a hogshead of molasses and cask of rum and other good old spirits in 1776. And a hogshead was what was used as the measurement at that time. A hogshead was like what we use as buckets then. So they just put all the goods in that and it was measured in hogshead. Five, the Negro arrived in the world free from tuberculosis, syphilis, and other venereal disease. Livingstone of the famous American missionary and a medical doctor said syphilis had died out in the African interior and is seen incapable of permanence in any form in any person of European blood. Syphilis originated in Europe in 1494 when there was a great epidemic of it. As of this was 2 years after the discovery of the New World. It was erroneously believed to have been brought back by the sailors of Columbus. Yeah, they spread a lot of diseases when the Europeans, the Spaniards and the Portuguese came to Europe. Yellow fever, syphilis, and that eradicated out of the native population. And even today, there are some groups in Africa that are immune to HIV based on natural selection. Fact number 6, and we're under the arts now. The Negro was the first artist. The oldest drawings and carvings yet discovered were executed by Negro peoples over 15,000 years ago in southern France, northern Spain, Palestine, South Africa, India. These are drawings on rocks, carvings on bowls, basalt, and ivory, which is from elephant and other animals like that. Next fact, the oldest known representation of a human body is that of a Negro woman who it was carved by a Negro sculptor of Grimaldi race from 10 to 15,000 years ago. It's called Venus of Wendeloff, after the place in Austria where it's found, and it's in the Vienna Museum. 8, knew him as a black Spaniard, but they did not see the correlation. His teacher, immortal Joseph Haydn, who wrote music for the former Austrian national anthem, was colored. Was also colored. 9. When they take a change, they take a change.
you know,
They take a change.
itu.
When Miss Moon get a change, when I come, get a change.
Chanimon.
Jose Vanescoles, El Negro Poestia, born of African Congo parents at Amalgala, Mexico, was about 1710, wrote verses that were so popular that it entered Mexican folklore and were
Menti kujiwa.
painted annually on the calendars of Mexico until 1872. So that's about 160 years after his death. Ancient civilizations. The Grimaldi and Negro race lived in Europe as late as 12,000 years ago. 2 complete Grimaldi skeletons are in the Museum of Monaco near Monte Carlo. Traces of their culture have been unearthed in southern and central Europe. 11. Elam, a mighty Negro civilization of Persia, flourished about 2900 BC and perhaps is older than Egypt or Ethiopia. One of its later Negro kings, Kodar Nakuta, conquered Chaldea and Babylon and brought back to his capital, Sosa, rich treasures, among which was the famous statue of the goddess Nana. Later it became the capital of Cyrus the Great and Darius. Susa is the Saskatchewan of the Bible, where Esther, the Jew, sought the favor of King Afar. No, Mickey, would have cookie. Cheops, a Negro, built the Great Pyramids of one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. It was 405 feet and had 2.5 million blocks of granite, each 2.5 tons. It covered 13 acres and took 3 plus 2020, which is 5,000. We don't have no fries yet here. No, we don't have no fries.
I know first.
No, we don't have no fries. One of the cookies and fish, but we don't have fries. But daddy must have cooked up a yard still. Daddy must have cooked up a yard. 13. There were at least 18 Ethiopian unmixed Negro rulers of ancient Egypt, the best known of which was Pianki. Leaving his country in Central Africa, Pianki conquered all of Egypt to the mouth of the Nile in 1750 BC. 14. The sacred river in India is named after an Ethiopian king of that name who conquered Asia. As Ganges comes from an Ethiopian king, and the word ganja comes from that river. A lot of Rastafarians use ganja, and it is of no relation to Ethiopia because the ganja, fact 15, the most ancient lineage in the world is is that of an Ethiopian royal family. It is said to be older than that of King George VI by 6,130 years. The Emperor Haile Selassie, ruler of Ethiopia, traced his ancestry to King Solomon and Queen of Sheba, and also beyond that to Kush. So Kush was the name of the the first 1280 BC. So the king was called Kush, and his empire was later known as Kush. And Kush was also one of the first countries to be named in Genesis. Central American mountains crossing from Africa to South America, a distance of 1,600 miles. The first white men to reach the American mainland tell of seeing Negroes. Columbus, who first visited South America, said that he heard of them there. Ghana. The earliest inhabitants of Africa were not black but brown. Today, the peoples of mixed and unmixed Negro descent living in African Oceania probably exceeded in number the present Negro population of Africa. India has millions of Negroes. The purest Negro types are in South Asia. In 1923, Dr. Joseph Rock of United States Department of Agriculture discovered an inheritro known as an inheritro on the race, the Nakis. 200,000 number in southern China. So these were some Chinese black people, and superior to their neighbors who lived under white rule. 18. In the United States Army drafts of World War I, the Negro proved physically fitter than the white man. For every 100 men physically examined, the ratio of colored men found physically qualified for general military service was percent, namely 74.6 against 69.7. Next part is literacy and intelligence. The peoples of Southern Europe, including Italy, and for in 70 years of Negro illiteracy had fallen about 80%. In 1870, it was at 1870 it was at 82%, and in 1930, 63. So there was a disparity in the time and the systematic racism in the United States that underdeveloped the education of African people because the literacy rate was at 80 and it had fallen. Afro American literacy is three times higher than that of white one. Nevertheless, when certain states are matched against certain others, there's a surprising comparison. For instance, Negroes of California, Minnesota, New York, Nevada, South Dakota, Oregon, and Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, and New Mexico. New York, Minnesota, Oregon, South Dakota Negroes are less literate than Mississippi whites. The Negroes of these seven states are less illiterate by 100 to 400% than the foreign-born whites of all states except one. 21, fact 21. The United States Army intelligence tests during World War I, the Negroes of Pennsylvania, New York, Illinois, and Ohio led the whites of Mississippi, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Georgia by from 1 to 7% literacy. 22. 2 centuries ago, the Negroes of South Africa and Northern Europeans both practiced forms of cannibalism that was strikingly similar. The vital organs of slain foes, the Negroes made a motti or charm against evil. Sometimes they ate the heart of a brave man, believing that it gave them courage. The Europeans would roast or dry the bodies of the hanged criminals. Of these, they made muama, a medicine for eternal and external use, which was supposed to have a particular curative charm. In 1683, when the Germans defeated the Turks at Offen, Switzerland, thousands surrendered. Turks were treated in this manner. The army surgeon who was present wrote, "None were given grace. All were massacred, and in most cases they were skinned. This they made a precious muama." Regular cannibalism existed in Germany as late as 1650, and the next chapter is exploration. Fact 23. Estebanco, a Negro from Morocco, was one of a party of four to cross the North American continent in 1536. Mexico. Estevanico served to open up the southwest and states west of Florida as far as the Pacific. Baptiste Ponte de Solebay, a Negro in 1779. 25. Tupo Tibo, a Negro trader in slaves and ivory from Zanzibar. Zanzibar. It's a country in Africa, but I'm trying to find the modern equivalent. It's probably Uganda, Zanzibar. I'm not quite sure now. East Africa. Yeah, so it's somewhere in the east. It was the first civilized man to penetrate the center of Africa. He explored a territory nearly as large as the United States, and Africa is a lot larger than the United States by area. It's a lot larger, and population too. Stanley Wesman Cameron and other white explorers followed in his path. He died in 1905, very rich. 26. For 2,234 years, human beings tried to reach the top of the world. Thousands of lives and millions of dollars were lost in the attempt. On April 6, 1909, Matthew Henson, a New York Negro, was the first of a party of six to do so. He is now, in 1943, the only human being alive to have stood there. The first Arctic explorer was Phaethus, a Greek who perished in the attempt in 325 BC. Next chapter, Science and Invention. Massachusetts. So it's abbreviated, but I noticed in the uppers, its invention, which was 11 years in the making, revolutionized the industry and gave shoe supremacy to the United States. It made several millionaires, one of whom left 4 million to Harvard University. And in those days, 4 million would be a lot more. That would be like 56 million or something now to Harvard because of inflation. Overwork and privatization hastened Matslinga to give In 1889, at the age of 37, he left a few shares of stock to a white church, which later saved it from being sold for debt. 28. George Washington Carver of Tuskegee Institute, one of the world's greatest agricultural chemists. He was awarded the Roosevelt Medal in 1939 for distinguished service in the field of science. From the peanut, from the peanut, he extracted 285 products, and from sweet potato, 180. He was one of the greatest African scientists of modern history. So even peanut butter that we use now, made by George Washington Carver. Dr. Carver was born a slave. Thomas Edison once offered him a large salary to take charge of one of the laboratories, but Carver refused in order to continue his work that he began Booker T. Washington at Tuskegee Institute. Next chapter, Jews and Ethiopians. The Mohammedans believed that Moses was a black man. Their Bible, the Quran, says so. So this was a word for Muslims back then, I guess. The Quran says so. God told Moses to put his hand in his bosom. The Quran says it came out white. The commentators declare that Moses could not have been white before, and that the miracle Jehovah intended was the making of black skin white and turn it back again. The Septuagint, Septuagint or Greek Bible agrees with the Quran. So that would be like what we call the Pentateuch, but he said the Septuagint, meaning that there are probably seven instead of five. So foreign to us, but it's not as foreign as like per se Old English. It's Actually, can you buy some first me? It's more modern and easier to understand than Old English, so I wouldn't have much problem in analyzing it. Point 30. The characters of the Bible are largely Negro. The Jews were slaves to the Egyptians for nearly 430 years. Only 70 Jews went to Egypt with Jacob. The Bible says that 600,000 men left with Moses. According to the Hoshapher, meant a total of 3,150,000 with women and children. For this large number to have left mixing with the Egyptians, they were black, who were black, they must have taken place on a vast scale. About 12 million Negroes were brought to the New World. Imagine how much of their original color and culture they would take to them should they return to Africa, and you realize how much of the original Jews remain. In those 70 Jews, after 4 centuries, Theophilus, Roman historian of 900 AD, says the Romans of his day popularly believed that the Jews, which then abound in Europe, came from Ethiopia, the land of the blacks. The present white color of European and American Jews is very likely due to the same cause as fair skin, straight hair in a large number of Negroes. The Bible classes Ethiopians and Jews together. Ye not as the children of Ethiopia unto me, O say the Lord. Chaldea, the land from being black. 31. The Falashas, or Negro Jews of Ethiopia, led by Queen Judith, put the line of Solomon and Queen Sheba off the throne of Ethiopia in 937 AD and ruled for 40 years. The Falashas assert that they are the original Jews. They call themselves Beta Israel, or the chosen people. 32. The Negro Jews of India are not permitted to enter the same synagogue as the white one. nor do they bury their deads in the same cemetery. Medicine, next chapter, medicine. 33. Imhotep of ancient Egypt was the real father of medicine. He lived about worshipped as the Prince of Peace in the form of a black man. His Ethiopian portraits show him as a Negro. Imhotep was also prime minister to King Djoser, as well as the foremost architect of that time. The saying, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you will die, has been traced to him. Hippocrates, the so-called father of medicine, lived. African Negro was a Charles the Seventh, King of France, 1403 to 1465. When the king fell dangerously ill at Toulouse, Aben Ali was for and he cured him. Thereafter, the king made him a member of his suite. Negro was the private physician to King Carlos I of Portugal until the latter's death in 1908. Dr. Daniel Williams, Chicago surgeon who died in 1931, was the first to perform a successful operation on a human heart. Politics. France has had six colored cabinet ministers: Servirino de Heredia, 1887; Senator Henry Lamentry, 1915 to 1918, and 1934; Alice Delmont, 1928; Balasse Diané, 1931; Gracian Candes, 1932; Zan Monerel, 1937; De Heredia, as Minister of Public Works, built some of France's finest roads. Point 38. Eugene Chen, one of the most dynamic political figures of the present century and Minister of Foreign Affairs of China in 1927, was born of Chinese Negro parentage in Trinidad, West Indies. In 1878, he was also secretary to Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the first president of China. Race mixing. This is the next chapter, race. Point 39. Persenia, a queen of Ethiopia, 60 BC, presented her husband Hydaspes with a light-colored child, which is strange among Ethiopians. She declared that it was due to the presence of a white statue in the room at the time of conception. Similarly, Maria Teresa of Spain and Austria, wife of Louis' daughter in 1665. The queen spent most of her time with a Negro dwarf named Nabo, while the king passed most of his with the beauties and thronged the court. The doctors examined the color of the child by saying, the black man looked at the queen. and J.A. Rogers said, it must have been a very penetrating look, said the king wrathfully. A noted writer of the time attributed the color of a similar child born to a high noblewoman to the mother's fondness of chocolate. Point 40. Anna, a Negro servant girl of Calavaccio, Italy, wife of a white mule driver, became the concubine of Pope Clement VII. Her son, Alessandro, born 1511, became reigning Duke of Florence and married Margaret, only daughter of Emperor Charles V, ruler of Germany and the Netherlands, Austria, and Spain, in 1536. Number 41. White American slaveholders used to induce white women to marry Negro slaves in order to hold women slaves for life. Thomas Jefferson, his wife protested loud and long to no avail. Patrick Henry, another signature of the document, had a Negro son named Malation. Thomas Jefferson is a very controversial figure because he has a couple branches of his family. The descendants are buried in the cemetery that he's buried in. So there's a controversy when the colored part of this family should be getting interment into that same plot. There's a whole documentary on it. So right, so they up to today, up to recently, I'm not sure if it changed. They're not allowed to be buried in that family plot, which is like a club of all of Thomas Jefferson's children. However, they are still invited to meet at the annual Thomas Jefferson memorial, like the family memorial. So they are invited, the colored half of the family, but they're still not allowed to be buried in the family plot for all of Jefferson's descendants, which is intriguing. All right. Number 43. Napoleon planned to solve the color problem in Haiti by making it legal for each man to take three wives, one white, one mulatto, and another black. He had Napoleon had several conferences with the theologians in this grand measure. He tried to win the consent of the Pope. In 1787, while a party of 351 freed Negroes were aboard a ship at Portsmouth, England, en route to Sierra Leone, West Africa, the authorities brought on board 62 white women, prostitutes, and others whom they wished to get rid of and married them to as many men and them off to be future mothers of the colony. Point 45. In 1850, Miss Leobon, an English woman, was the queen of slave traders at Rio Pongo and one of the principal slave ports in West Africa. She had a fort armed with cannon and armed by 300 devoted blacks. She had three mulatto children by a Negro, a boy and two girls. One of the latter married a white slaveholder and the other a British consul. Number 46. The Countess de Botronas was related by marriage to Napoleon, married a full-blooded Haitian Negro, and named Castinja, who was member of the Paris Convention of 1792 to 1795. And next chapter is religion. Noted statue in the world bears the face of the Negro. It is the Sphinx of Giza, which is worshipped as Horus or Hermachus, the sun god of light and life. It's erected about 5000 BC. The devil of evil as white. When the whites came into power, they shifted the colors, but as late as 1500, the Ethiopians still depicted their gods and heroes as black and their devils as white villains. Father Fernandez, a Catholic missionary who worked amongst them at the time, says they painted the Christ, the Blessed Virgin, and all the other saints in black form, and the devils and wicked men as white. Thus, Christ and the apostles are black and Judas as white. Annas, Caiaphas, Pilate, Herod, and the Jews are white, while Michael is black and the devil is white. Point 43. Nearly all the ancient gods of the Old and New World were black and had woolly hair. Buckley says, from the woolly texture of the hair, I am inclined to assign to the Buddha of India, the Fuji of China, the Zaha of Japan, and the Quetzalcoatl of Mexico. I actually know that name, I just knew by an origin. In the Bible, God, or the Ancient of Days, is described as having hair like pure wool. Far as north as Russia, were black and negroid. Point 49. The Bible really originated in ancient Egypt, where the population, according to Herodotus and Aristotle, were black. Here, the Jews received almost all their early culture. Professor Breasted, leading Egyptologist, says the ripe social and moral development of all mankind in the Nile Valley, which is 3,000 years older than that of the Hebrews, contributed essentially to the formation of Hebrew literature. Our moral heritage, therefore, derives from a wider human past, enormously older than the Hebrews, and it comes from us through Hebrew form from them. Number point 50, and we're halfway through. Imams that read like those in the books written by the Pharaoh Amenhotep the fourth, better known as Akhenaten, heretic king 1300 BC, or more than 400 years before David was born. Akhenaten, who was the father of Tut Ankh-Amon, was extremely Negro in type. He was called the most remarkable pharaoh, and Akhenaten was probably who they referred to as pharaoh, like just the generic term pharaoh, Anakat. 51. The Ethiopians, that is Negroes, gave the world the first right and idea of wrong or right, thus led to the basis of religion. So the first religion was found in Ethiopia, which differentiated, give a basis of what is right and what is wrong. And the earliest exposition is yet to be found, so-called Memphite drama, which is known through a copy of slab and basalt made in order of an Ethiopian king in 700 BC. So, we're going to go a little stretch. You see, so we're halfway. Get energized for the next part of the marathon. Right? 52. There were three African popes of Rome: Victor from 189 to 199 AD, Malcades from 311 to 312, and St. Gallius 496 AD. It was Malcades who led Christianity to the final triumph against the Roman Empire, which had pagan religions until then, because they were worshiping like the Olympians and the Titans. And 53, the celestial saint of Germany, Saint Maurice, was a pure Negro while in command of a Roman legion in Gaul, Switzerland in 287 AD. He refused to attack, who when ordered to do so by the Emperor Maximilian Heraclius, for which he was killed. And because you know that when a Christian is killed, that's called in Christianity martyrdom, and he is elevated to the level of a saint. His picture is in many of the German cathedrals and museums, sometimes with a German eagle over his head. Recent pictures of Hitler, nearly 700 years, 1,700 years later, Hitler also with the same in his head, because Hitler was a charismatic leader for the German people, so charismatic figure, was so charismatic, he had the German people in trance. So that is a symbolism of the esteem and at which they held Bishop Saint Maurice. Next chapter is that of rulers. Point 54. On November 15, 218 BC, Hannibal, the first full-blooded Negro marching through conquered territories in Spain and France, performed astounding feats across the Alps with only 26,000 of his original force of 82,000 men. Remaining, he defeated the Romans, the mightiest the next 15 years. Hannibal was the father of military strategy. There are a lot of movies named Hannibal, really. Empire of Carthage, which is now in Tunisia, North Africa, and it was fully African. The tactics are still taught and led in military academies of the United States, England, France, Germany, and many other lands. Point 55. Yusuf, a king from Upper Senegal, Africa, saved the Moorish civilization in Spain in 1086. The Moors were being pushed out by the white Christians of Germanic descent. Yusuf crossed the Straits of Gibraltar with only 15,000 men. Most of them were pure blacks. The latter had an army of 70,000, nearly 3 times as great, but Yusuf inflicted a terrific defeat on him. The flower of white knighthood was destroyed in that battle among the Bevar, known as the Cid, uh, and the greatest figure of the heroic age of Spain. So Yusuf had basically defeated them all in battle. Number 38, at Askia, the great emperor of Gambia, from the Gambia River, from the um, from as far west as the Senegambia River to the internal parts of Chad. So that's a big empire that's as long as Western Europe, basically. And yeah, the and large west basically it goes on to say larger than Western Europe. Its capital was Timbuktu. 57. The first World War in history was started by Abraha, Negro emperor and ex-slave, when he attacked Mecca, Arabia in 1569 AD. Lasted for more than 1,000 years and stretched from France beyond to China. It brought about the fall of several great empires. One of them, the later Roman Empire, capital Constantinople, in 1453 AD. 58. Moli Ismail, emperor of Morocco, whose mother was a Negro slave, had 25,000 white slaves captured on the seas or on the coast of Europe and the British Isles and brought them to his palace at Meknes. Moli Ismail's stables were the vastest in existence, with stalls for slaves until his death in 1727. And yes, people like Africans also enslaved Europeans in those days. Point 59. John the Sixth, King of Portugal, was a dark mulatto, and he was the maker of modern Brazil, transferring his throne to Rio de Janeiro in 1808. He ruled Portugal from Brazil, and this was the first and only time a European country was ruled. The first time a European country was ruled by an American one. Americas in North and South America. Fact 60. Pedro I, colored son of John VI, became the first emperor of Brazil in 1822. Pedro I married the sister of Napoleon's second wife, Gloria. Pedro's daughter became the Queen of Portugal and was the sister-in-law of Queen Victoria of England. Many members of European royalty trace their ancestry to the Negro ruler John VI. So a lot of them trace their ancestry to John the Sixth, just as a lot of them trace their ancestry to Charlemagne. 61. Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte, a colored man who was the founder of the present royal family of Sweden, enlisted as a private in Napoleon's army, who rose to be field marshal. And field marshal is the highest honor you can get in a military anywhere in the world. The field marshal is the highest rank. A lot of times the head of state is the representative of the field marshal. So in a lot of different armies, Napoleon himself would have been the field marshal. So basically he was head of Napoleon's army. And he in 1880 he ascended to the throne of Sweden as Charles the 14th. So it was this same person that became Charles IV. And when you are coronated, there's usually a name change from your birth name to something else, to your regal name. Point 62. Keto